On a humid Friday evening in Manhattan, something strange happened. Thousands of people, ordinary people, stood pressed against metal barricades outside Madison Square Garden, staring at a building they could not see inside. There was nothing to watch. No stage, no screen, no game. Just a curtained-off arena and the slow parade of black SUVs slipping behind white tents. And yet they stayed, for hours, in the heat, waiting. Because inside that building, the most famous woman on the planet was getting married, and for one night, the whole world wanted to feel like it was invited. This is the story of how Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce turned a love story into the biggest event of the decade. And to understand why a wedding could stop a city, you have to go back to how almost nobody saw it coming. Let's rewind to the summer of 2023. Taylor Swift was in the middle of the Eras Tour, arguably the most successful concert tour in human history. She was, by every measure, at the peak of her powers. And Travis Kelce was a tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, a two-time Super Bowl champion. Funny, charming, but living in a completely different universe. A football star and a pop icon. On paper, their worlds had no reason to ever touch. And then came one of the most charming first moves in celebrity history. Travis went to one of her shows, hoping to meet her, and planned to give her a friendship bracelet with his phone number on it. He didn't get the chance. So instead, he did something almost no one does to Taylor Swift. He complained about it. On his podcast, in front of everyone, he told the story of being, in his words, a little butthurt that he couldn't slip her his number. It was bold. It was a little goofy. And it worked, because Taylor heard it, and the rest quietly began. For weeks, the world wasn't sure it was real. And then Taylor Swift walked into a stadium in Kansas City, sat in a private box next to Travis's mother, and cheered as he played. The cameras found her instantly. And in that single moment, two of the biggest fan bases on Earth collided. Football fans who had never listened to a Taylor Swift song and Swifties who had never watched a down of football were suddenly watching the same love story unfold in real time. Not everyone loved it. Some football fans complained the broadcast showed her too much. Critics rolled their eyes. There were conspiracy theories. There was cynicism. There were people insisting it had to be fake, a marketing stunt, too perfect to be true. But here's what stood out about Taylor and Travis. The more the world watched, waiting for it to fall apart, the more it simply didn't. They showed up for each other. He flew across the world during her tour. She stood in the freezing cold at his games. It stopped feeling like a stunt and started feeling like the real thing. Then, in August of 2025, they made it official in the most them way possible. They announced their engagement on social media with a caption that read, quote, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." Simple, funny, warm, and the internet lost its mind. That single announcement became one of the most liked posts of the year. The fairy tale had a next chapter, and now the only question left was, when and where would the wedding be? And that question, it turned out, would become a global obsession. Because Taylor Swift did something almost impossible in the modern world. She kept a secret. For months, nobody knew where the wedding would be. And into that silence, the entire internet poured its imagination. Rumors flew that it would happen at her 8-bedroom mansion in Rhode Island, the historic estate she'd owned for over a decade. Fans studied satellite images. They tracked flight paths. At one point, a Rhode Island senator had to publicly confirm that the state had, in his words, been given a pass. It wasn't happening there. This next part shows just how big the whole thing had become. According to CBS News, more than $2 million was wagered on prediction markets over where the wedding would take place. People were betting real money on a stranger's wedding venue. And then, in late June, the New York Times cracked it. Taylor had rented Madison Square Garden. A permit had been filed to shut down the streets around the arena from July 2nd to July 4th. Several of Travis's Chiefs teammates had booked rooms at a nearby hotel. The clues all pointed to one impossible truth. The wedding of the year would happen in the middle of the busiest city on Earth. And that choice Madison Square Garden was pure genius. Think about it. If you're the most photographed couple in the world, how do you get married in private? You don't hide in the countryside, where a single drone or a long camera lens could capture everything. Instead, you pick an indoor arena, a fortress, a place with no windows, no sightlines, no way in. A building that could hold 1,000 guests and lock the entire world out. They didn't run from the spotlight, they walked right into the center of it and then closed the door. By the time July 3rd arrived, the secrecy had reached almost unbelievable levels. For days, reporters watched as 18-wheeler trucks pulled up to the garden and unloaded supplies, almost all of it hidden under wraps. Celebrity event planners told CBS News it was like producing a blockbuster film. Crews built a massive custom set inside the arena. One guest would later say the venue had been completely transformed. They had turned a basketball stadium, the home of the Knicks, into something out of a dream. Before we step inside, if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this one. It genuinely helps the channel grow. Okay, let's go to the wedding. On the evening of July 3rd, the black SUVs began arriving just after 3 in the afternoon, pulling into white tents so no one could see who stepped out. But the guest list revealed itself piece by piece, and it was staggering. Steven Spielberg, Tom Brady, Paul McCartney, Hugh Grant, Selena Gomez, Ed Sheeran, Gigi Hadid, and Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lopez, Chris Rock, Jimmy Fallon. It read less like a wedding and more like the Oscars, the Super Bowl, and the Grammys had all merged into a single room. Around the building, 135 police officers stood guard. The streets were sealed, and behind the barricades, thousands of fans stood cheering every time a car rolled past. Inside, it was a strict no-phone zone. Not a single official photograph or video has ever been published. In an age where everything leaks, where every moment is filmed, they created a space where 1,000 of the most famous people alive simply put their phones away. And what happened inside, we only know because the guests couldn't help but talk. So let's walk through it. The couple transformed the arena into what guests described as a secret garden. Peach-colored carpets, soft drapes, and enormous photographs of Taylor and Travis at every age of their lives, lining the space so that guests walked through their entire history to reach them. The ceremony was officiated by their longtime friend, the comedian Adam Sandler. Picture that for a second. One of the most emotional days of your life, and the man pronouncing you married is Adam Sandler. There was no traditional wedding party. Instead, Taylor chose her brother, Austin, as her man of honor, and Travis chose his brother, Jason, as his best man. The two Kelce brothers side by side at the center of it all. The couple wrote their own vows, and according to the anchors of Good Morning America, who were there, those vows were deeply loving, funny, and intimate. One guest said the whole night was far funnier and more emotional than anyone expected. That, despite its enormous scale, it somehow felt small, personal, real. And then there was the dress. Taylor's gown was a custom Christian Dior haute couture piece, designed in close collaboration with the house's creative director, Jonathan Anderson. She accented it with jewelry from Cartier and shoes custom made by Christian Louboutin. And this is where it gets fascinating. Because no photos have ever come out, that dress became a mystery all its own. Days later, at the Dior fashion show in Paris, the chief fashion critic of the New York Times reported that Taylor's unseen wedding dress was the single biggest topic of conversation in the room. An entire fashion industry buzzing about a dress almost no one had actually seen. Even the small touches told a story. Every guest received a custom embroidered white napkin stitched with the monogram TNT, and beneath it, a lyric. So it's gonna be forever. A line from her song Blank Space, a song she'd written years earlier, long before Travis, back when her love life was tabloid fodder and punchlines. Now, that same lyric sat folded in the hands of 1,000 guests. transformed from irony into a promise. As midnight came and went, the celebration spilled on. Guests finally began to leave, and the fans outside erupted all over again. And then, on giant screens around the city, with the Empire State Building glowing in the distance, 3 words appeared: just NT married. Almost on cue, a light rain began to fall over Manhattan, and a strange calm settled over the crowd. It was done. They were married. If this story is giving you chills, drop a like right now. It helps more people find videos like this. Okay, let me tell you what almost nobody talks about. Before we call this a perfect fairy tale, let's be honest about the whole picture, because that's what makes it real. Not everyone celebrated. A wedding this massive, this expensive, in the middle of a working city drew real criticism. Some pointed to the enormous cost, with estimates ranging from $15 to over $30 million, and asked whether any wedding should cost that much. Others were simply exhausted by the sheer scale of the coverage. And there was that awkward moment when the invitation itself leaked online, shared by the relative of a friend, breaking what was clearly meant to be ironclad privacy. But the critics often leave out one thing. Ahead of the wedding, Taylor and Travis quietly made a $26 million donation, split across 20 national charities, food banks, children's literacy programs, organizations that feed families and teach kids to read. They didn't announce it for applause. It simply came out, and it reframed the entire event. Because whatever you think about the spectacle, the couple used their biggest, most self-focused day to move millions of dollars toward people who needed it. So what do we make of all this? Why did a wedding, one single wedding, manage to stop a city and captivate the entire planet? I think it's because in a world that often feels cynical, exhausting, and divided, Taylor and Travis offered people something almost old-fashioned. A story that actually ended happily. 2 people from different worlds who met by chance, who were doubted at every step, who were told it was fake, or a stunt, or too good to last, and who simply kept choosing each other until they were standing in a secret garden in the middle of Manhattan, writing their own vows, surrounded by everyone they loved. For one night, the whole world got to believe in a fairy tale again. And maybe that's why those fans stood outside for hours, staring at a building they could never see inside. They weren't there for the celebrities, or the dress, or the spectacle. They were there because sometimes it feels good to witness something go right. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are married. And the strangest, most beautiful part of the whole story is that in the end, it really was that simple. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe to Celeb Viral, and tell me in the comments, do you think their love story is the real deal? I read everyone. I'll see you in the next one.